How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Shaun Attwood channel. I'm Ron Swanson. We are live with Jonathan Schwartz, who has a epic tale to tell us this evening, going from financial advisor to some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, to embezzlement, into prison, into a whole bunch, and we're going to go through the whole story. But before we delve into it, Jonathan, how are you? And thanks so much for being here.
Oh, Ron, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on this lovely podcast of yours.
Well, listen, we love interesting people here, right? And we love an interesting story. And anyone who is in that sort of unknown world to us normal folk, the Hollywood, the celebrity world, all of this, people kind of get drawn to it. And before we sort of delve into the major name dropping segment of this, because it's incredible who you've worked with. And I think for a lot of people, the main question for them is, how do you go around? How do people just start of getting involved with people on that level? But we'll go through your story and we'll get to that point, Jonathan. But again, thank you for being here. Big thank you to everyone who's coming and joining us straight out the front door. Ron will probably sit and waffle nonsense for 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll get straight into the main part of the interview. But doing my research on yourself, Jonathan, quite an interesting case. And I think you handled everything really well. You know, the way that when everything sort of hit the fan, metaphorically, you put your hands up and you took your licks. There was maybe some sketchiness about some illegal growing operation or something like this that we need to talk about, because there's a lot of fun little moment. Fun for us as a listener. I imagine for you it was a scary time. But take us back to before all this happened, right? You're getting into financial advising. I'm not queued up too much with the terminology, but take us through your sort of initial stages in getting into that form of life.
Yeah, it started, growing up. Frankly, I was only good at accounting in high school. I wasn't like this great academic student, if I could say that. So I had about 7 cousins in my family that were CPAs, and one of them in particular was an entertainment business manager with a specialization in music. And so, every time I would see him, he was significantly older than me. I knew that I wanted to come work for him at some point in my life. And so, whether it was my accounting teacher in high school or in college, I just knew that I was drawn to numbers. I wasn't interested in any other subjects, whether it was history, science, earth science, you name it, that nothing interested me but accounting, because numbers are black and white.
Yep.
The one thing that in my life that didn't lie were the numbers.
Right. And it's interesting when you say that, because accounting is sort of the one thing that you can slot into any level of business, from the mom and pop shop right the way up to, the evil bloodlines that run the world, Jonathan. You know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting one, because you do kind of, it's a limitless work, effectively. It's kind of like being a hairdresser. There's always going to be needing a haircut. So you had this love for numbers, and I think a lot of people are drawn to one thing or another. I certainly was more inclined to like numbers, until they started pulling out maths with triangles in it. Right? Once I got to that point, I was like, oh no. So your fascination for numbers, the family member who worked in the music industry, you sort of had that direction from a young age. You might not necessarily knew where you were going to end up, but damn well you knew you were going to have a calculator in your hand and there was going to be numbers involved. So take us through the next stage of your journey there, Jonathan.
Yeah. So I came from a pretty unstable family. We moved around a lot as a child. I had a lot of childhood trauma. I do not use my trauma as an excuse for any poor choice that I made, any poor choice I made. So when I moved from New York to San Francisco to kind of complete my college year and a half, when I graduated, I called my cousin up, this particular guy in the business, and I said, "Hey, cuz, I'm ready to come work for you." He said, "You're not ready to come work for me. You're immature, you're irresponsible. What do you know about business management?" So he suggested that I kind of hone my analytical skills and deepen, my knowledge in accounting. And so I took his advice, excuse me. Yep. I went to work for a sole practitioner in the financial district of San Francisco for about 3.5, 4 years, auditing, tax work, which to me was very boring, but nonetheless, I needed to learn it. And, he called me, and after about 3.5 years, he said, "You're ready to come move from San Francisco down south to Los Angeles." So I packed my Honda Accord with my wife at the time and my first of 3 beautiful sons, came down to work for him. I didn't want the word nepotism associated with me, so I was the first one in his office, the last one to leave. I pretty much was told to go into the mailroom, read all the clients' files, learn what we do as business managers for these celebrity clients. And that's what I did. I was a young staff accountant making very little money working for him, but at that time, it looked like a great opportunity for me to, embark on this career as an entertainment business manager. And in 1999, I believe, his firm was acquired by Chase Manhattan Bank, now known as JP Morgan. He asked me if I wanted to get into like family wealth investment banking. I said, "Cuz I love you, but I do not want to get into investment banking or family wealth management. If it's okay with you, cuz I'd like to take a small book of business and join another business management firm." And at that time, he gave me his blessing. So in February of 2000, I joined a firm called GSO Business Management. And I went there with a small book of business. And before I knew it, that business was growing each year. And after several years, those partners made me a partner. And it started with a great band called Linkin Park. They released Hybrid Theory in November of, I think, 2000, excuse me. And that was my lucky break in terms of a crossroad opportunity to work with an A-list artist, because the small book of business that I took from my cousin with his blessing, I would say were more in the classification of like B-level clients, right? They weren't like selling.
I mean, it was your foot in the door clients, right? I mean,
Well said.
you've got a little bit of experience behind you, but I mean, you're thrown in the deep end. Even if you've went and done all the boring stuff in a basement at somebody else's office block. This is as deep as the end can get at your age and your experience level, I would imagine. So, Linkin Park, I mean, that's an epic first client to be getting you to, well, of that caliber, shall we say?
Absolutely. I mean, they rose to stardom faster than anybody in that decade, starting in 2000.
Yeah.
And they deserved it because they were 6 very humble guys who each of them had an amazing contribution to the band collectively.
Yeah.
I admired them deeply. In fact, the first time I was in their tour bus, I was thinking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll because that's all I ever associated the music business to be like. To my surprise, I walk in there and there's these 6 nerds playing video games.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I guess maybe this is what my higher power is trying to bring me, a little bit humility here. And those guys taught me everything that I needed to know to become, until I wasn't, a fairly successful business manager. They had high expectations on what the role I would play as their business manager. I wanted to exceed those expectations. And thanks to, their vigilance and their right to demand, sort of the financial products that they ask for, I was able to then use them to build a very successful practice. And frankly, it wasn't just because of me. I had a whole team, and we had a great team assembled, and
Sure.
And those guys I admire very much. And, I don't really follow music today. I don't follow those, a lot of former clients, but I am impressed that as much as I love their lead singer, Chester Bennington, and think about him almost on a daily basis, they have resurrected their careers with a new lead singer.
Well,
And
Jonathan, that was what I was going to ask you, because they left it a long time. They let the dust settle, because you're never going to replace Chester, right? It was never going to happen. For a start, when he first came, when the world was introduced to Linkin Park in Chester, and that little skinny, nerdy dude with the flame tats, like the most cliche looking dude ever. And then he just opened his mouth, and you were like, all right, okay, all right, I'll shut up now. It was amazing. And, they were probably the greatest manufactured band in the world ever. They were all experts at their own little sliver of the band. Now, I need to ask you, Chester's passing, right? When that all happened, there was a shroud of conspiracy. Even his son now is taking up arms to discover the truth, shall we say. Is there anything that sort of resonated with you when you found out? Did you think, oh God, there's more to this? Or Did you just take it for what it was? And you feel free not to answer either way as well.
No. As I mentioned, I'm incredibly transparent, and so for me, this is how first of all, I received that information about 2 weeks after entering prison. Someone told me that he had killed himself. I already was a crybaby the first few months of being in prison, let alone now week 2 of being in prison. And here I have this news, and I knew I wasn't welcome to call any of the members, but I took it hard because a few months before being sentenced, Chester asked me to go to lunch with him. And I went to lunch with him, and he said, "Jonathan, did you steal from us?" I said, "Chester, actually, I did not. But don't believe me. The firm is auditing every client. You've been audited, and no monies were taken." He said, "Because my wife thinks maybe you did." I said, "You know what? I respect that, because given what the news displayed, it was as if I stole from every client. It doesn't make, whether I stole from one or four or all, it's still what I did was wrong." And so he was really honest with me. I was really impressed that he felt comfortable enough to be candid and direct with me at that lunch. And he did say that he was disappointed in me. And I respect that too, because even my indirect clients, meaning the clients that I didn't take from, they didn't deserve to be embarrassed by knowing that this guy, Jonathan, embezzled money from other clients, right? So
understandably, of course,
Yeah. And so Chester and I left there feeling like, I was glad that he got to get that out of his system. And, with Chester had a history of, which was already public, so I'm not saying that wasn't public. He had a really difficult childhood, and we had to do a couple interventions with him during the early part of the Linkin Park career. And unfortunately, he wasn't heard and understood as much as he should have been. I actually loved all the guys, but Chester was very special to me. He sold me one of his cars so I can give it to my middle son. He came to my.
That's a serious bond, Jonathan. That is testament to, regardless of what happens at later dates, people who don't do their job well don't develop those relationships, and that bond speaks, volumes about your relationship with your clients. It really does.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sad irony, is that even the clients that I took money from, and I know this is going to be hard for listeners to believe me, and hopefully throughout you'll see that I have more humility today and very little ego, but back then I did have an ego. And I cared about the clients, even the ones I took money from, because I'm thinking I'm going to pay back. But we'll get more into that, I'm sure, later. As it relates to Chester, I'm still devastated by it. I don't know the story as to behind it. I only know what everyone else has read. I heard about his son as well. Yeah. Here's what I can say: that Mike Shinoda, Brad Delson, all the original band members cared deeply for Chester and his family. They were a beautiful band that really was all about their families, Chester included. And if Mike didn't think that he could develop a sort of a resurrection of Linkin Park's brand with a new singer, he would not have done it. And in my humble opinion, he didn't do it to be disrespectful to Chester.
No, anyone that plays that narrative, we're so past listening to that. Okay, yes. If we're talking about a business, right? And one of the major managers is no longer here. How long do you think that business is waiting to fill that position? Absolutely. A day, 2 days? We waited years. Okay, they came back, and you could have said the timing with the woke movement almost could have tainted their comeback with a woman as the front. But she came out and she smashed it. She smashed it. I've seen her first gig. She was terrified, absolutely terrified, and she smashed it. And I'm here for it. I think that it's the best possible resurrection that they could have done. So I'm fully here for Linkin Park Part 2. And thanks for sharing all of that, Jonathan. And it's always nice to sort of get little insights from people who have, had a friendship with people like that. So thank you very much. Now, before we go any further, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Make sure you're sharing this out for me. And from Linkin Park, where did it go from there in this story, Jonathan?
So from there, I was able to land a lot of, not a lot, a handful of other A-list clients, including, as the public knows, Alanis Morissette, who was my largest direct victim of my crime. The irony, no pun intended, with my choice of words here. When Alanis was looking for business managers, she interviewed, many, and why she hired me was because I brought to that pitch, I brought financials. This is what I will present to you every month. I'll give you a tour budget when you're ready to embark on a tour. If you like the bottom line, the profit margin of the tour, and you green light it, we'll keep you in line with the spending accordingly. As to your personal finances, this is what we'll do for you. As to your risk management, here's how we'll protect you with various insurance policies. So she was impressed with, my visual presentation, and that's why she hired me. And for a while, it was great. I mean, listen, she's a genius. She's an intellect beyond anybody I've ever met, not limited to music. I mean, this woman is a super intellect. Sometimes she would say things I couldn't even comprehend. But, unfortunately, we worked together for a long time until we didn't in 2015 when she fired me. And from there, I was able to get a lot of other names, good referral sources, whether it was Beyonce, or whether it was Gwyneth Paltrow, and some great, Chance.
Let me just dig a little bit here, because you mentioned that you had an ego back then, right? Mm-hmm. These must have been like steroid bombs for that ego, right? By the time that we're getting Linkin Park, Alanis Morissette, Katy Perry, 50 Cent, Tom Petty, Gwyneth Paltrow, Mariah Carey. What? I mean, you must have gotten to the point where you've just morphed into the ego at this point, surely. Because I can tell you right now, I would be the same. Okay. I had a YouTube channel with 120,000 subscribers on it before YouTube deleted it for me going after Hollywood elites that were not nice to children. And that sent my ego crazy, right? And that's like this much of where you were at. So when you started working with Alanis and you got to know her as well, how further down the line, how many years into the relationship with her was it before things started going south with embezzlement, shall we say? And we may circle back, but just let me know. I mean, how long before that sort of kicked in?
It was years and years before that started. And I had a charity, and she was the first artist I invited to sing, and she agreed to come sing. And like with Chester and like with all my other clients, as we talked about earlier, I felt like we were all family. And here I am taking money from some of my family members, if you will. And, she nor others deserved, my behaviors and my embezzlement of their monies.
Sure.
But so Alanis she's got a great voice, but it started to get to a point where I was not giving Alanis the attention that she wanted nor demanded. And it's because, with all due respect, she wasn't that relevant anymore in the music business. And in fact, I recall a conversation I had with her and her lawyer and her manager at the time. And she says, Jonathan, how come I'm not, getting these big touring opportunities anymore? And I was the type of business manager, to be honest, when I was, not in my active addiction, I was the type of business manager that was not a yes business manager. So my response was as such. I said to her, Alanis, it's because you're not relevant anymore. Oh. And I said, if you want to be more relevant, because you've got a beautiful voice, you're a beautiful songwriter, you're also a beautiful performer, but why don't you start writing music for some of these younger female artists that are just opening up doors in the music business right now, whether it was Ariana Grande at the time or Halsey, who I represented at the time. Why not work with some of these artists? And now you reestablish your credibility, and maybe you'll do another Jagged Little Pill song out there. And, I think she handled it like a professional, because I didn't say it disrespectfully. My intent was to respond to her professionally and to just give her my professional opinion. And that's all it was.
I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, spot on. But it's strange because Alanis Morissette, another one is Sheryl Crow. Like, where did they go? Like, what happened? I feel like we went from CDs and Blockbuster Video, right, to Netflix and streaming, and there was just a certain demographic of 90s mega icon that just never transitioned, if that makes sense. I don't know why. It's odd, but I mean, you always sort of get that when there's a technological shift. Some people just don't board the train, metaphorically speaking, Jonathan, you know?
Well, yeah, and you're right. Listen, look at what Linkin Park did when they were the first ones to do a mashup with Jay-Z, right? They were they were creatively, bar none, the most brilliant artist I've ever met, along with perhaps I would say Beyonce. And with Linkin, they tried to adjust to their fan base. They had an uber fan base, right? And as years went by, they decided, we need to change our style because we're getting older, but so is our fan base. And they tried that experiment, but it didn't quite work to the level they wanted to. And now with this new Linkin Park, I believe Mike and Brad and all the guys decided, let's go back to our roots. Let's go back to what we're great at. And that's what you're seeing with Linkin Park and hearing with Linkin Park now. Atlantis didn't do that, but to some degree, and again, I'm no longer in the industry, but from what I can observe from the outside of the industry, Atlantis is still having success. Maybe her touring isn't in the large venues she wants, but she's still got that amazing voice, and she's still an amazing talent.
See, I think a lot of people, once you actually become solidified as an icon, it's either things are going to fizzle out or things are going to catapult, and it's one of two things. And yeah, I can imagine Alanis is just sort of trying to push back, trapped between what she feels like she needs and deserves and wants compared to what is actually available. Because I mean, that Jagged Little Pill was, I mean, that was everywhere. So I mean, it's quite, I mean, it puts a layer of like sadness to this whole story that you're such a nice guy, you were so connected with your clients, you had this long successful career before anything went, you know, the wrong way. So what was it that started? Because there must be something. I don't know if it's gambling or booze or women or narcotics, but a dude like you just doesn't wake up one day and go, do you know what?
Yeah.
Criminal. That's what I'm going to do. Because also, I just want to point out, you were paid well. Like your job was like, what, 1.3 million a year, something like that. Am I guesstimating right here?
Yeah, and that was early in my career. And then, you know, I was scheduled to make 2.5 to 3 million a year. Okay. But money never brought me happiness.
Well, this is the thing. When you find out how much you embezzled, right, compared to what you were earning every year, it didn't add up for me. I mean, somebody like you should be hitting the one big 50 million embezzle, you know, finding someone that looks like you drive off a cliff and ending up on an island somewhere and no one ever hears from you again. But when I looked at yours, I was like, oh man, it almost felt like, you know, when you hear people doing these cries for help. Now, I'm not saying that's what it was, but I couldn't get my head around it all. So this is why you're such a fascinating rascal, Jonathan, because let's talk about the catalyst. What was it that started? Because I imagine you've had a lot of time to think about this, and you can see the little links that formed the chain that brought you to what happened. And can we start painting a picture of what the road towards that was like, if you can?
Yeah, I mean, so I was coaching my kids' youth sports teams. Now I have, at this point in my life, I have 3 sons. And this assistant coach said, do you want to gamble? Do you want to place a bet? And I had about 2 previous stints before this question that he posed to me. In college, you know, I grew up poor. So in college, I wanted to hang out with, you know, my fraternity brothers who, you know, had a higher net worth, you know, they came from affluent communities. Yeah. And so I had this genius idea, or so I titled it as such, that why don't I and another fraternity brother and I become bookies? And, you know, this is like my junior year of college, and bookies don't lose. Well, he agreed. And we were probably the only bookies on this planet that lost after 2 weeks. And, you know, for us, we lost $10,000, which 5 was my responsibility and 5 was his. And I decided that I can't afford 5. So I left school without telling my fraternity brother and left him to pay the outstanding debt, which I tried to make amends to him when I returned, but he didn't want to hear from me, and I can understand that. I put him in a second.
So, because that's interesting, right? Because Now we're getting into the little version of us that's inside of us that no one likes talking about. So, and again, I'm not trying to, take you from the side or anything here, but I mean, that's an interesting psychological point, that the first sign of danger, you were just like, I am out of here. And, you were willing to protect yourself, right? And that mindset is interesting, because I think without that little sliver within some people, we don't end up embezzling $7 or $8 million and going, oh no, you see what I'm saying? And take us through that then. So you'd started up a bookies, and I'll tell you this right now, I would have been the same. I would have been like, how have I no money now? And it's interesting, I've only just realized this now, but if you're an accountant and like numbers, bookies would be your go-to criminality, I would imagine, right? So
Sure.
It's all making sense, Jonathan. You're drawing us in here. So that was that your first real experience with crime and criminality in the underworld?
I don't know if I would call it a crime then, but it was my first compromise of what I thought I had in terms of my integrity and value systems.
Okay.
And how I probably got this, I call it a disease. I call addiction both a disease and a choice, but how I got this gambling and later on in my life, cocaine addiction, was my father, may he rest in peace. He was a gambling addict and a cocaine addict. And now that I'm in a new career, which we'll talk about later, I understand that there's a thing called multi-generational transmission where, your mother, your father, you even skip a generation, your grandparents, if they struggle with alcohol or they struggle with mental health, it's possible, highly possible, that they can transmit that down to you. And so I didn't realize that, I didn't know that, but definitely I got that compulsive gambling, a label now. So I come back to San Francisco. Now, fast forward, my second entree into gambling was when working for my cousin. One of his partners said, "What, you want to gamble?" I said, "Sure." And at that point, I lost $3,000, which, if you recall, I was not making a lot of money as a young staff.
Right. Okay, so I've missed the point on this. This isn't the criminality road. This is the gambling. This
Correct.
Is the right, I'm with you. So, yeah, sorry, I beg your pardon.
No,
okay, I'm with you.
So he paid the $3,000 for me. He was my boss, and then I didn't gamble for a long time. And then I meet this assistant coach, and he said I started placing bets with him. And the first week I lost, let's say, $25,000. And I said, okay, I have all the money I need to pay this and more. Why don't I just take it from my bank account? And I made the second genius move in my life of a few, of which, instead of taking it from my own account, because I didn't want my wife or my kids or anybody to see me withdrawing money, why don't I just, quote unquote, borrow money from, let's say, Atlantis?
Was it because you were worried that your wife and kids would see it being deposited? Or was that what you told the little evil version of yourself inside? Right? Because it's interesting when we get ourselves into a situation, we have more than capabilities of getting us out of that situation, but it's almost like our brain decides to take us on the worst possible road of decisions it can come up with. And I'm not saying that we're not accountable for our thoughts and actions, but it really fascinates me when we're sitting alone in a room, Jonathan. No one's judging us. No one can see what we're doing. And there's the right path and the wrong path in front of us. And I'm telling you, by the sheer lack of accountability to anyone else, 99% of people end up going down that wrong choice road. The human condition is fascinating. And I proved my point with this, Jonathan, by saying, why is it a child who's 5 years old, who has no concept of thievery or treachery, when he's told not to take a cookie out the jar, will make a plan to get the cookie out the jar? No one has taught this kid espionage. No one has taught this kid to be deceitful. But the bare fact of being told not to do something, and now human instinct kicks in, and when mum's not in the kitchen, by God, we're getting in that jar. And if it wasn't for 5-year-olds doing that, the human condition, like I say, it fascinates me. And you being presented with that choice, it's an interesting one. Because I wonder if that decision if you had 2 or 3 people in the room around you, right, passively observing what you were doing, I wonder if you would have made a much different choice. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when I say genius, obviously that means the antithesis of genius. It was like absolutely absurd, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I suppose, you asked a good question. Like, was I really doing it because I didn't want my wife to find out? At that time, yes, but given the amount of years now that I've had to reflect on all these poor choices, I probably just hadn't dealt with my childhood trauma, and I wasn't in the right frame of mind. And I
Was
was,
it not a little bit exciting?
yeah,
Was
I
it not
wanted
a little bit like, I have the power, the numbers are mine? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I imagine at some point the little evil genius will have started brewing, right?
Yeah.
And we all like to, with hindsight, when we tell a story, I did this for this reason, to protect people can relate to a guy who doesn't want their wife finding out. I think you were just like, this is exciting, right? This is exciting, and let's just see what happens, right? You seem like a let's just see what happens when we roll these dice kind of guy, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, it wasn't. I honestly didn't get excited. It was the first of now every day for 6 years being scared shitless that I'm going to get caught. And now not only was I gambling, but I was also having other self-sabotaging behaviors like infidelity, cheating on my wife with, I'm making this up, maybe 3 women over the course of my 6-year gambling run. And I don't know who I was when I looked in the mirror. It was certainly someone I wasn't proud of.
Can I ask, those 3 events that took place, did they coincide with major gambling or criminal events that took place? Was it major wins, or was it anything like that? Was it because obviously you're living 2 lives now. You've got the accountant and the family man, and you've got the Colombian marching powder fueled embezzling rascal. Was there moments that coincided with that infidelity where the manifestation of that side from you was brought out by a certain event taking place that justified that stepping across that line?
Well, nothing justified my behavior, but what contributed to it was my insecurities from childhood and bringing that into adulthood. I said I like you said, I truly lived, as the AA Big Book says, this double life, right? Pretending to the outer world that I was Superman, when really deep down inside, I was this very insecure, low self-esteem individual that just didn't know that asking for help was a strength, because growing up for me, asking for help was a weakness. I definitely believe today wholeheartedly and with great conviction that asking for help is a super strength and a superpower. I just didn't know that at this time in my life, or if I did know it, I didn't have the courage to ask for help. And so that's what led me down this dark path, and continuing to self-sabotage by making poor choices during this gambling run every single day for 6 years, not missing a single day, and losing and losing. And I'm chasing money, hoping to just win $7 million back one weekend, and no one will find out. I'll pay my clients back and I'll continue on as a business manager. Well, you and I know the story, and hopefully your listeners will know the story ultimately as to what happened and my demise. But I never enjoyed gambling. I was just chasing this. Gamblers live in a world of grandiosity and fantasy, like I did, that I'm going to win this back. So don't worry, I got this. I'm Superman. I got this. Really? You're Superman? I mean, come on. So I was lying not only to myself, but everyone in my path. And every Sunday night after the NFL games are over for that week, I'm concocting a lie I'm going to tell the bank that holds my clients' monies. And for 6 years, think about it, almost every week, lying on a Monday to the private bank, telling them that client A needs $50,000. And when they ask me why, I'm making up some lie. Oh, because there's a producer coming in the studio and it's less money if client A pays cash. Or, oh, client B is going to make some home improvements and the contractor loves cash, it'll cost less. I mean, how I came up with these lies, honestly, I was just a degenerate at this point in my life of gambling. I
can tell you right now, you came up with them. That Colombian marching powder, my friend. This sets the synapses going. Do you know what I'm saying? Let me just ask you a question. I don't want you to get too personal, right? You mentioned previous traumas. You've mentioned self-sabotaging. Before you mentioned all that, I mentioned the amount that you embezzled seemed like a weird cry for help. Do you think in any weird way this could have been a level of self-sabotage? Yeah, because I don't even know how to word it. Some people find comfort in chaos. Some people, when they don't have anyone to turn to, they want to destroy themselves so that they can pour their heart out to someone, if that makes sense. And a lot of people don't get it, especially when it's people who are successful. You know, people, well, why would you want to jeopardize all that? But that's not how, you're not seeing that when you're in that position. And I mean, have you ever thought to yourself, you know, was this a level of self-sabotage to rip yourself open and rebuild from that trauma? I mean, at any stage.
So for me as a therapist now, which we'll talk about later, I understand the why. I'm no longer searching for the why.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, the trauma, it plays adverse childhood experiences plays a role and a contributing factor in poor choices based on whatever one's life experience was. And for me, these experiences led to me making an enormous amount of poor choices, right? Not limited to the infidelity, not limited to just gambling and stealing money, but really not being emotionally present for my incredibly beautiful 3 sons and a wife who didn't deserve to find out about this in the very last minute when it was becoming public. I kept this dark secret from everybody for 6 years. Not a single person knew this. So I could not sleep at all at night. And in fact, I don't know if I could say this here, but let's say I wanted to off myself. I had those type of thoughts, and those thoughts led me to starting to use cocaine and becoming dependent on cocaine to numb myself beyond what gambling was able to numb, contribute toward my numbness, if you will. So
how long into the gambling were you before the white powder started?
I would say about about 5 years plus before the end of the 6 years. Yeah,
you were clean from the white stuff for 5 years, and you were in the gambling for 5 years. That's mad. So you were coming up with excuses every single day, just off the cuff.
Yeah, I mean,
God, your mornings must have started right with 2 seconds of not remembering the life you have. Then it all hitting, your stomach turning, you're standing in the shower while your wife and kids sound like in the background, while you're piecing together yesterday's lies to then bring today's lies together. I mean, there's got to be some sort of Blue Peter badge or something for the length of time that you handled that stress. I know we're talking about crimes, right? But for me, the individual, the you is the fascinating part of all of this, because you're a person. And for 5 years, that's what you went through. And I've been through interesting parts of my life where I've woken up and had mornings where I'm like, I can't tell anybody about this. You know what I mean? And that, again, it's just a tiny amount of that. But when it's money, celebrities, and you know yourself, any one of your clients could bury you in legislation and paperwork in court because they've got a whack of money, you know? Now, look, I'm getting all over the place with this. So let's go back to you were saying you had started to gamble, right? You were effectively, borrowing and stealing from Peter to pay Tom and all of this stuff. Continue down that road with us. Now, was there any major gambling stories? Was there any high moments that stick out in your mind? Was there any, if this was a movie of your life, there would be elements that were more exciting than others? Was there any moments that stand out for you throughout the gambling side of all this for you?
I mean, throughout the gambling 6 years, it was miserable every day. There was no excitement. The only excitement I got was continuing to make poor choices. You mentioned earlier, like the choices, like consequences, right? Yeah. I never dissected that every choice we make has a consequence, whether it's a rational or good consequence or an irrational or poor choice, right? And I always defaulted to the poor choice because I was attracted to self-sabotaging, because that's how my subconscious mind was wired at that point in my life.
Relatable, Jonathan, very relatable, trust me.
Yeah, so I was living in this fight or flight survival mode, not really knowing what that meant until now in my new career. But
sounds like you had a crap time, Jonathan. I'm not going to lie. Like in my head, I was imagining Jonathan, Playboy Mansion parties, embezzled millions, you know, freaking $23 million yacht with all the Playboy bunnies on it. No, you were in a stress bubble of self-sabotage and a web of your own doing for 5 years. This is the most harrowing version of this story. I just want to point out because you're normal dude. You're normal dude. And the pressure of your own decision making. We've all been in your position on a tiny level. We've all done something we regretted. We've all done something that no one else knows about, maybe not on this scale, and we've had to deal with that eating us up. The only difference is for me and everyone else, after 3 or 4 days, we wake up and the first thing we think of becomes the 4th or 5th thing we think of, and then the 10th thing. And for you, you really are stuck on the roundabout, bro. And I mean, how do you cope with that? I mean, I'm impressed that you went 5 years without a crutch. I'll be honest, because that's a long time. 5 years is a long time to keep it from everyone. It's
6 years. 6 years of keeping it.
6 years, I beg your pardon. Well, no, you had a mad one on the powder for the last year. Okay, so that was the crutch year. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And let's sort of, because again, there isn't going to be any fun, exciting stories. I can tell. It's a harrowing tale. And I'll be honest with you, because this could happen to anybody. Okay, you make one bad choice, end up in a few $1,000s worth of debt, and then for whatever reason, that little devil inside us all that likes to self-sabotage us and all the rest of it, that's the side of us that makes you watch the crap on the TV rather than getting up to get the remote. Okay, it's that side of us. Okay, and it really took control of you, and the double life and the stress of it all. Let's talk to you, the father and the husband, for a minute. Going through all of this, how were you masking your own guilt? How were you masking your torment? I mean, there must have been a version of you screaming into your wife's eyes when you locked eyes with her, just begging her to figure all this out and free you from your own doing. How do you manage that?
Well, clearly I didn't manage it well, right? I lied. The biggest thing for me was not placing a strong emphasis on being emotionally present with my wife and children. And so being physically present, I was pretending that everything was okay. I was like this actor in my own world,
of course,
presenting myself to be someone I really wasn't. And, now that I've had a lot of time, almost 10 years, to reflect on all the people that I hurt in my life, I realized the importance of being emotionally present. I mean, listen, wink, wink, there'll be a book and there'll be a movie about my story, and it'll be Wolf of Wall Street on steroids, but that it's also going to be a component of learning how to find humility, learning how to be a better human being through the 12-step program, and surrounding myself with healthy people, quality in a circle versus a quantity of people. I was a people pleaser because I was so insecure. I didn't know how to set boundaries. Well, today I'm very different than that. I'm 9 years.
Do you think the people-pleasing mindset helped facilitate the self-pleasing decisions you made by having to please everyone and feeling like, because that over time makes you feel like you're at the bottom of the pile regardless, right?
Correct.
And with you being emotionally, because you're when you live two lives, you're half a person. Okay, so when you're half a person at home and you have that disconnection, you'll have put yourself at the bottom of the pile there by being so disconnected. Do you think that mindset of being a people pleaser facilitated some of those choices?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. If I didn't care so much about wanting people to like me, then perhaps my behaviors would have been different. I don't know that, but that's what I suspect. Had I learned to create healthy boundaries, had I learned to love myself and be comfortable in my own skin, then I would have avoided the people pleasing and the self-sabotaging. But because I didn't, as I said earlier, have the courage to ask for help, I'm just waking up every morning, soaked in my sheets and sweating from the white powder and wondering what's going to happen. Inevitably, I'm going to get caught. And thankfully, I did get caught, because I don't know how much longer I could have taken on this earth. And I wish I would have got caught earlier, or wish I would have asked for help sooner.
Yeah. See, most people who go down this road is to facilitate a bunch of good times. You're just covering your ass every day. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a scary road. And like I say, it's one that we can all fall into. It just takes one terrible day with money, right? And doesn't even have to be gambling. It could be losing a job and not telling your wife about it. So many people still get up and pretend to go to work and all of this. Having the confidence to be able to stand there, admit problems, admit failures, and understand the world keeps going is something that men have struggled with for a long time. You know, men, the biggest killer in my country, Jonathan, which is Scotland, of the over 40s, is self-unaliving. And you got to ask yourself, you know, what is it that is inside men that keeps us from opening up? And we're making progress now. I mean, we are making progress now. But you still see this. But I mean, I spoke to a guy that I've known for years just at Christmas time, and he was like, oh yeah, if any of my male friends ever cried in front of me, I would lose all respect for them. And I was like, wow, 2025, bro. 2025. Do you know what I'm saying? Let's be part of the solution, not the problem. Okay. So
it's funny. Sorry if I can. It's funny that you say that, because,
sure.
You know, for today, I want to be the male version of Brene Brown and go around and help men learn how to be vulnerable, encourage men to cry, because that's just a way that we can connect with our emotions. I cry almost on a daily basis today.
Yep.
I'm over 9+ years in recovery. And it's a way for me now to connect healthy with those emotions through crying.
Yep.
And you're right. I mean, when I speak with clients in therapy or at the treatment centers that I work at, it's all about being authentic and transparent and asking for help. All the things that I didn't know to implement for myself. So I'm doing this today so that people don't make the same mistakes that I've made. And the biggest reward I have in my life today is walking into a substance use mental health treatment center as a program director and a therapist and telling them,
is this more people pleasing?
No.
Have you become the manifestation of the result you think people want to see from your situation?
No, I've become a nerd today. I'm no longer, I'm a proud nerd today. And I'm doing it for myself because it brings me joy. I make very little money today because, as I mentioned, money never brought me joy, because today I've dealt with my trauma. Today I'm helping people not leave treatment centers with unresolved childhood experiences, who can go home and repair their family dynamics. I'm asking them to be personally accountable for their actions, something I am today.
Yeah, interesting.
Taking ownership. I mean,
yeah,
I am a changed man. I'm not that degenerate gambler. I'm not the guy who hurt so many people, and I own that. I don't make excuses.
I mean, I'll be honest. You seem as sincere as they come. You don't seem to be masking or hiding anything. You seem completely upfront and honest. And I think who you've become now is incredible. You know, you've went, here's all my mistakes. I'm now a living template for how to rectify or avoid those pitfalls. Now, again, I do this all the time in interviews. I'm sorry. Let's circle back, right? We're 5 years in. Let's take us up to the 5 years of the gambling before the white stuff started. How much money, how many celebrities are involved? And well, whatever you can talk about legally. I imagine there's a whole bunch of things that you never got caught for that we can't talk about. You know what I'm saying, Jonathan? I'm saying. So just talk about what you can. But how much money are we talking to up until this point? And how do we get into that level of a hole?
So I'm in Tampa Bay, Florida, when Beyonce's ready to launch her Lemonade tour, 2015, maybe early 16. And I get a call from my former partners, and they say, Alanis is wondering where $4.6 million is. In that moment, I'm still in denial. So I made up some story and said that she invested in a cannabis business. And when that was relayed by my former partners to Alanis's, by the way, the irony is Alanis, when she fired me in 2015, hired that cousin that was in business management that I worked for.
Nice.
He came back from the Chase Manhattan Bank world and opened up another business management office, and she hired his partner. And so now I know this is that crossroad moment where, although inevitably I knew this day would come, where this was like that moment where it's come. So I create this lie. Now I have to tell Beyonce that I'm going back to Los Angeles. I have to take care of some personal business. I arrive back to Los Angeles. I'm summoned by my partners into the office. They have a legal team, and they're asking me, did I steal this 4.6 million? I'm like, absolutely not. What do you mean? Why would I do such a thing? I'm still lying. I'm still dishonest. I'm still manipulative. And what happens is I tell them, you know what? If you don't believe me, give me a lie detector test. I'm playing poker with them. And so now we leave, I leave the office, and sometime around early May 7th, May 8th, I'm taking my wife, although we were separated, we're going to celebrate what would have been our 23-year anniversary. We had obviously a rocky marriage, 99.9% because of my poor choices and behaviors. And so now I get a call from one of my partners, and he said, last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget what the exact timeline was, when you said you would take a lie detector test. Well, we want you to come to Beverly Hills tomorrow, which would have been a Sunday. And we want you to meet with the former FBI's leading polygrapher. I said, okay. By the way, I'm all white powdered out. I'm out of my mind. So what do I decide? Here's this last genius move I've made in my life. I decided, you know what? Let me Google how to beat a lie detector test.
That was the next question, because I'm telling you now, I was just about to say to you, Jonathan, you're out your mind. You've just been asked this. You are within 2 minutes in the bathroom. You're in the bathroom in a stall, just panic Googling, just VPN. Do you know what I mean? Like 100%, right? 100 million%. And the ego and the powder, you only need to do 20 minutes of research to beat the #1 FBI guy. He ain't gonna beat you. You're Jonathan Schwartz, god damn it. You know what I'm saying? Oh God, carry on.
So now it's May 8th, 2016, because May 9th, 2016 is my sober date from gambling, abstinence, and all drugs, including white powder. And so now I'm driving down there. It's about an hour and a half from Santa Barbara to Beverly Hills. But, again, why not just drive down there and get prepared to just fail, right? But not me. So I decided, let me just bring a whole bunch of white powder with me in the car.
That's the solution for everything, Jonathan.
It's the only
when you're on the white powder, it will cure everything. Okay, bit tired in the morning, no problemo. Been up for 4 days, got a major business meeting, no problemo. Family funeral, 8-year-old birthday party, no bother, mate. Do you know what I'm saying? So I hear you. Brilliant idea. In fact, you know what? Stay awake for 2 days, then drive, right? And on the whole way in the drive, just be booger sugaring it up. Oh yeah, brilliant decisions. I mean, you're 6 years deep into denial and bad decisions. This is nothing. This is just another day at the office for you, man. I feel it. So you're doing your Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas drive to this FBI meeting. Just carry on. This is going to be peak in the Netflix series of your life. This episode is going to be the one everyone talks about.
Oh yeah, it's the biggest. It's one of the 10 great scenes of that you'll see in the movie. But so I get down. I place my last bet with the Spooky on May 8th, and last time I do what I do with white powder. I walk into the polygrapher's office, definitely high, definitely not the right drug as a stimulant to use when you're going to take a lie detector test. I put my feet up on the polygrapher's desk. Again, ego still very much involved and plays a role in my head. I lay back on the chair, and I'm having this 2-hour conversation with this polygrapher. And I'm thinking to myself, I got this thing beat. We're establishing a rapport. Like, I think he likes me.
Oh yeah, the minute your feet touched that desk, all of your worries went. As soon as your feet touched that desk and no one made a complaint, you were like, I got this. I have got this in the bag. Yeah. Oh yeah. Brilliant. The white powder mindset versus actual science. Okay. Brilliant. I'm just loving the way this is going. Carry on, sir. So feet stable. You've got a rapport going on. Carry on. Brilliant.
So I must have missed the part on the how to beat a lie detector test where they say his job is to build a rapport with me. I'm thinking I'm building a rapport with him. So anyway, obviously I get all the tests done, and I still think I have this thing beat. I call my wife. I say, hey, I'll be back. Let's have a nice dinner. I get back to the hotel in Santa Barbara, and I try to log into my office through my laptop, and I realize I have no more access. So I call my assistant. I said, do you have access to work computer? And she said, yes, I do. I said, okay, well, this is that next crossroad moment where I realize that my life is now over. I called my attorney, who's Nathan Hochman, who's now the DA of Los Angeles. And he said to me, Jonathan, you failed that test worse than anybody in this polygrapher's career.
Yes. In your mind, you smashed it, right?
Oh, my mind, God loved me.
I would have paid good money. Like at the peak of that moment, right? Where I would have paid good money to just be inside your brain and see the chemicals that have convinced you of the situation you're in. You failed it worse than anyone. Brilliant, Jonathan. Brilliant. But hey, listen, let's be honest. Other than the length of time you kept this secret, right? It's kind of testament to the journey, really. And to be honest, let's be honest. I think if it wasn't for the white powder, at least you got a fun story because of the white powder. That would have been a stressful, sweaty mess of a Jonathan sat in there if it wasn't. I mean, I imagine you probably broke a sweat as well, but it's such a funny moment in a series of bad decisions. I mean, what happens then? What happens then when you're stood there and they've said this to you? I mean,
so I now had to tell my wife for the first time what I was doing. And, clearly the divorce came shortly thereafter. So Nathan said, you need to come down and meet with me tomorrow. And you're facing 23 years in federal prison. So now
just on that day, you're out your nut. They've just told you that you failed worse than anyone, and now they've told you you're going to get a quarter of a century.
Correct. Absolutely.
The absolute narcotic spiraling. No one will top that. You'll never top that. No one will ever give you news as bad as that in that state ever again. Wild.
Well, and it's because today I do the next right action as the nerd I said I am today. But yes, back then I was obviously not those 6 years I didn't know who I was, as I said earlier. And I certainly am not proud of it. But one thing I don't do is live in my past, but I don't forget my past. And so now I meet with my attorney. He works out a 4 to 6 year plea agreement. On May 3rd, 2017, I'm sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. And I went to Sheridan, Oregon, because they had the only West Coast United States residential drug and alcohol program, which took a year off my sentence. And then I used Con Air to transfer to a closer facility so my kids, God willing, would come visit me. And because of COVID, I was let out early. I have heart disease, so that also makes using the white powder even more self-sabotaging, because that's the last thing one should do when they have a heart condition. So I was released in April of 2020, and life has been a challenge every day. But I don't play the victim role. I don't play the woo me party for myself. I mean, I put myself here. These are the consequences of one's poor choices, and in my case, I either can choose to accept that these are the consequences and do the best that I can to continue to be a better person and grow, or I can play the victim role, which I certainly don't choose anymore today.
Interesting. Like I'm very much a fan of like picking apart the human condition, but before we do that, I want to circle back to the court, the divorce, and prison, right? So it must have been a realization for your wife and made the last 6 years make sense, because you were together, you said 23 years, right? I mean, that's a long time. So 18 years of normality and then this odd chapter. I mean, she must have then felt the pressure of, oh, well, how couldn't I not have known something, right? How couldn't I not have spotted this? All the rest of it, because that's what we do as people.
Yes.
Like, how? Because I mean, I imagine if you could have kept your family separate from everything, you would have. But when we get caught, these things happen, and it's that next layer of guilt and self-hate and all of that you then got to carry on into your jail time. Now, Shaun, a wonderful Shaun Attwood, as always, has a standard list of questions he asks people when they go into prison, which I will adopt now. So going in to prison, obviously the fear, the everything, right? I mean, you're not going in for tough guy crimes. It's as white collar crime as you can get, right? So what was going through your mind before you went into, and this is for all you potential rascals out there who are thinking any of this sounds like this is where you're going to learn. This is why this is not the fun part. We're past the fun part, which in Jonathan's case was just self-torture for 6 years. I don't know if he'd done the embezzle. I don't know if he'd done criminality the right way. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if you nailed it. But going in, you must have just, I mean, it's horrific. So the reality, what did you see? What was the most terrifying prison moment for you? If you don't mind recalling anything that's too traumatic, I'm very respectful of people's free will. So don't think you have to share anything. But I mean, Shaun,
I'm comfortable sharing with you, Ron. You're a great host. So I'll answer that question now. Before I went, after I was sentenced, so before sentencing, in fact, I hired a prison consultant because I was in fear that I was going to get raped in prison. That's what you watch on TV.
Yeah, right? Fair enough.
But I really didn't just do it for myself. I also did it for my youngest son. And it did make my younger son feel that his dad was going to be okay.
First of all, what the hell is a prison consultant? That again, I guess when you're like the financial advisor, I mean, that is the most white collar crime thing I've ever heard in my life. Right? I had to hire a prison consultant so that I felt better. I mean, until you said the R word, there was a lot of comedy that I could have got from that, but the realities are quite terrifying. But I mean, what was that like? Googling that for a start. Oh, prison consultant, Google reviews. 4.8. Let's go with that. Thank you. Yeah, only in America, man. Only in America. Sure. So, and again, this is just, I'm on the spectrum, right? So these are the things that nobody else picks up on, that Ron picks up on, and these are the things we talk about for some reason. So take us through that. Was there like a vetting process, the whole prison? What was that like? Like, just take us through that. I've never heard of it. So enlighten us all.
Yeah. So this is he was highly recommended from a friend. His name was Justin Paperny. Was really helpful to me. Just in understanding what I'm about to enter and what my experience might look like. And despite all of his coaching, when I surrendered on July 11th, 2017, I started crying every day for 6 months, counting. I can't believe I got 72 months or 6 years or X number of days. And then some guy approached me and he said, "You got to stop crying. This is a prison. Like, you can't cry." I said, "Well, okay, what do I do?" He says, "Well, stop counting. Instead of counting your days, why don't you use like a barometer?" So I used
stop counting. Did you know who he's talking to, Jonathan? You're the numbers man, right? You're the numbers man, and he's telling you to stop counting. You're like, "Why don't you just cut my arms off, you moron?" Right. Okay, tell me to stop spelling. I'll be happy with that.
So, needless to say, I stopped crying. He got me a great job. The irony about this job is one of the jobs besides working in education was he took me up to like what we call the multi-purpose room, where you had to be approved by the COs, and it's where the COs eat their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I was vegan in prison. I ate rice and beans every day. And so
I would probably be vegan in prison too. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because a lot of the food as it's labeled is not edible for human consumption.
Well, there was the big kosher movement as well. There was a whole period where so many people were transitioning to Judaism because apparently the Jewish meals in prison were way, way better than the regular meals. It's funny what people get up to behind bars, man. I mean, it really is. It really is.
Yeah. So I went up to the room, and this is not made up. This is the truth. I see the television on a music video, and it's Alanis Morissette playing the song "Ironic." I'm like, "Are you effing kidding me? Is this like my higher power?"
No, that the universe set that whole thing up, mate. That universe set that whole thing up. They were all of them. sitting up there going, right, wait, do you see what we're going to do today, right? He's going to wake up. We're going to send the guy in and tell him to stop counting, right? And then when he walks through, he's going to see Alanis singing it. It's ironic. Yeah, there you go. There's proof of higher powers right there, people.
Oh, yes.
Right? That song hasn't been on the TV in 12 years. 12 years. Okay. Sorry, Jonathan, carry on with your story.
No. So I was blessed to get that job because there was some, these COs were getting quality food while us inmates were getting nothing. So I then started to run a victim impact program in prison where I was helping inmates, try to identify who their victims are. And for the white collar guys, it took them a few weeks to realize that they had victims, not just their family. For the drug dealers, they would say to me, Jonathan, what do you mean I have victims? I said, what do you mean? I said, you sold drugs to people. Do you not know? You don't know if the people you sold drugs to became addicted. You don't know if the people you sold drugs to died from an overdose. You don't know how you ruptured their families. They said, you're right. And then what was nice about that, the impact itself, was now listening to them on their phone, no longer cursing at the one who's taking care of their kids, whether it was their wife or girlfriend or whomever. Now they're saying, thank you, and I'm sorry. And
do you know what's crazy? That's probably the first time in the stored memory of that guy's lifetime that somebody's educated him on the actual consequences, the ripple effect of actions. And it sounds so, oh, well, Ron, don't be silly. That's not how society is. That's because you've come from a nice part of society. Okay. Like, trust me, just because you're like living in your nice little house and you know a guy that sells a bit of herb, that guy that sells a bit of herb ain't the substance dealers we're talking about. If you're willing to sell somebody, fent or the brown stuff or the crystal stuffs that facilitate addiction, which facilitates so much of the negativity that is petty crime and gang warfare and turf, like that is a whole different level. And you have to have a void of empathy in some way, shape or form to not have to do that job without it needing to be facilitating your own habit, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think when somebody like yourself sits down and explains to somebody who's had a life like that, it can have an impact because, for a start, I imagine that for a lot of these people, tender moments, right, between two males are rare. Yes. Teaching moments and moments where they're not being observed by their culture to react in a certain way to being educated or being soft or something like that. It's fascinating how surroundings and circumstance can impact us so much. Because if you had that same conversation on the stoop, no one's paying attention.
Correct.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's fascinating.
Right. Well, and what I had to do.
Who's to say though, right? That isn't everything that has happened has led you here, has led you to this, and
Absolutely.
It's also as well, I want to state this, everybody got paid back from your crimes, right? I just want to point that out.
Yes, everybody got paid back. And as I mentioned often, that doesn't make what I did wrong right? They got paid back in full, everybody. But it's, at the same time, like when I try to model the right behavior, and it started in that victim impact program. So my transparency was, I hurt a lot of people. I hurt my children. I hurt my ex-wife now. I hurt my mother who's battling stage 4 lung cancer and my stepfather. I hurt my brother. I hurt my partners. I hurt my employees. I hurt the indirect victims and the direct victims. I hurt the entertainment space. I hurt so many people. And if I were to live in the past and carry guilt and shame daily with me, there's no way that I could, live a meaningful life anymore. And so for me, working the 12 steps, going to addiction study school, going to grad school to become a therapist with a specialization in addiction and trauma, making, as I said earlier, very little money. I struggle to put food in my refrigerator. I struggle to pay for, gas in the car or my rent. But you know what? I get by, and I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to be of service to others. And this is what I said earlier, just brings me the best joy. And I model this to my clients that I see in therapy. What you're hearing now is the humble side of Jonathan. My humility today is much higher than any form of ego or isms that I have. And I'm very active in the 12 steps. I'm very active with Gamblers Anonymous. I take commitments, and honestly, I'm not doing people pleasing anymore. I've set boundaries with people who aren't healthy for me. It's like the healthy version of being selfish. We get to set boundaries with people. And you're welcome in my inner circle if you're not toxic, and you're not welcome if you don't respect my boundaries. And today, there's a funny story, and I've shared this a lot. When I got caught, my Eastern Western medicine doctor called me up and he said, Jonathan, I want you to wear a suit. I'm sorry for what I just saw on TMZ, but I want you to meet me at this house tomorrow. And I'm not going to tell you why, just trust me. So I trusted him. I go there. I walk into this house. I know nobody. In the backyard, there's a rabbi giving a eulogy at a funeral. So I don't see the doctor. I sit in the back row. Doctor comes in. Doc, what is this? He said, Jonathan, this is a staged funeral. The person who owns this house fears death, and he wanted to stage his funeral so he could hear what his guests, if you will, were going to say about him.
I would totally do the same. If I was a crazy billionaire, 100%. And then I'd step out at the end and be like, right, why? I'd be phoning the people that aren't there for a start. But listen, I'm dead. Why are you not here? That's the sort of crazy stuff I'd be doing. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it was bizarre. So when we leave, the doctor and myself, and he says to me, Jonathan, what is your takeaway from this? I pause for 20, 30 seconds. I process it, and my answer still would be the same today. In the height of my career, my former career, at that time, I would have had, I'm making up this number, 600-700 people attend my funeral. Of those 600-700 people, 98.5%, whatever the percentage is, would be there out of professional obligation, not because they care about me. Today, if I were to die, maybe I'm fortunate enough to have 50, 60 people at my funeral. But those 50, 60 people at my funeral, they care about me, the real Jonathan Schwartz today. Yeah, and that's why, and I use this example because it's not about quantity of people in my inner circle. It's about that quality I referred to earlier in my inner circle. And that's how I choose to live my life today.
Interesting. I got a couple more ADHD throwback questions to stuff we were talking about an hour ago, but that's how my brain works, right? And again, it's me dipping into the psychology of all of this, because during any of this, did you have any source of confessional? These ladies that you overstepped that boundary with, did you find yourself pouring your heart out to them or confessing anything or anything like that? Did the two coincide? Because I imagine people needing to verbally get things out is one of the biggest catalysts for pushing them to do a terrible choice. So I just wondered if there was any correlation between getting things off your chest and crossing that boundary.
When I came home, I did work with a therapist online. It was during COVID. I did EMDR, which is a very good therapeutic modality to deal with trauma. And so I finally had dealt with my trauma, and I did make amends to a few of the women whom I harmed, in the sense that, first of all, they knew that I was married, but I never took them out to lunch or dinner. It was all about just hanging out, going to parties, being intimate. That's disrespectful to a woman. And today, I would never do that. I would never cheat on a woman today. My ex-wife didn't deserve to be cheated on. She was a beautiful soul, a beautiful mother, a beautiful human being, and I just couldn't see it.
It wasn't the father and the wife that led you, the husband, sorry. It wasn't the father and the husband side of you that led you to there. It was the other half of you that led you there, if you see what I'm saying. And
absolutely.
It's hard for people to understand being two different people, but being the same person. And yeah, can I ask you, the timing of these three women as well, was that before or after the white, or during the white period?
It was during the white.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, yeah, okay, so yeah. So let's be honest, 5 years without any stepping over that line. Yeah, that was just. Do you know what? If anything, that was you just cashing in on some fun points because of how terrible a criminal you were, right? Like you do crime to have fun, right? You done it wrong, bro. You got the wrong memo. But look, I just want to say to everybody, if you got any questions, I have been saving everyone's questions. But if you have any questions, put 3 capital Qs before them, get them in, and in a little while we will be moving on to your wonderful questions from the wonderful side chat. Okay, so let's talk about proudest moments since all of this has happened, because it's one thing to, keep us entertained with the wonderful decisions that you have made, right? And the Alanis Morissette on the TV screen moment is another just beautiful, beautiful moment. Since then, right, you're no longer a people pleaser. The ego's gone. But I imagine your new addiction now is helping mold people into a truer version of themselves. Let's not say better version, but a truer version of themselves. Because I imagine you are hooked on that fully, right? Yes. I imagine if you had to stay in the office for 36 hours just to help someone, you're in there. I can see that in you. And it's sincere. You resonate. And I have got a bullshit radar built into me. So take us through the proudest moments. Take us through those moments where you're like, yeah, nice. And also, I imagine you had moments, I meant to say this to you earlier, you must have had moments during those 5 years where you were standing there going, that was the best lie I've told. I don't know where that one came from. Marijuana farm, where did that come from, for a start? Those weird conversations that we have in the mirror with ourselves.
Yes.
Right? Because listen, man, there's tiny slivers of your existence that I have lived tiny slivers of, the double life, right? And those conversations in the mirror, there's ones where we are verbally abusing ourselves, and if we could rip our face off with our nails, we would. But there's some of those days where we're like, am I an evil genius? Like, where did I pull that from? Like, Kaiser Sozeing lies together and things like this. But, let's not give you any credit for that. Let's talk about the proud moments. Let's talk about those moments. But tell us about them, man, because I can tell there's a few. Come on.
Yeah, there's a lot of proud moments today. I'm still trying to earn back the trust of 2 of my 3 sons, but trust isn't earned by the words that come out of my mouth that they once knew was a mouth that was full of dishonesty and manipulation. So I try and do the best right action, as they say in the program, and I try and do the next best thing every day. And my higher power will bring my 2 of 3 boys back in my life when the time is right. I miss them very much. I love them. The absolute most proudest moment in my future life is going to be when my 2 boys forgive me, and myself with all 3 of my sons have a barbecue together. That'll be the most joy that I will ever experience in my entire life. The joy that I have today is doing the next right thing for myself. My mother is battling stage 4 lung cancer still today. I get to speak to her on the phone every day for a minute, and I get to hear her voice, and I get to tell her I love her. And I pray that my higher power will keep her on this earth for longer, because I need her. Proud moments continue with, when I first came home, I couldn't get a job. Dunkin' Donuts hired me for 2 months, and I got fired because I wasn't mopping the floors and cleaning the countertops well. And I then decided it was time for me to give back to my brothers and sisters in the program. And so graduating grad school and addiction studies school, and having an employer who knew my background check, and despite my background, decided to give me a chance at employment, working in a treatment center for substance use and mental health. And fast forward years now, she promoted me to program director and a therapist. And my proudest moments of my day is walking into a treatment center and asking clients, how are they doing? And actually meaning it, that question, not putting up a Hollywood phony bullshit. How are you? I love you. That doesn't exist. The program is about being honest. And so, some of them will talk to me. Some of them will say, can I meet with you later today? And when I leave home, am I emotionally drained? Yes. But I know that I'm helping people today in a way that is authentic, and in a way where when they say thank you or write me letters or emails after they discharge, that they're still sober and doing well. Those are things that make me proud of the work that they put in and how I was a small part of that. Because I cannot take credit for someone's success, even as a sponsor. I cannot take credit for my sponsee's success and their ability to maintain a sustainable recovery. But on the other hand, I can't take responsibility if they relapse either, right? They're in control. We're all in control of our destiny and what choices we make today. So today, I do ask myself on almost any choice or issue that I have in my life, what is the healthy choice here and what's the not healthy choice? And for the most part today, I pick the healthy choices. It could be as silly as Do I want to pay $5.95 today for a Starbucks because I really don't have that much money? Or do I just want to make coffee in my apartment? And usually I say make coffee in my apartment because I have to be physically responsible today.
I'm that guy too. I just want to point that out right now.
Yes.
It's like, listen, I know you use Starbucks as a generic term, but you very, 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 very nearly put me on a side quest about ranting about coffee prices there because it's madness. It's madness. It's madness. But I mean, it's you resonate with this. Like, I don't think anyone can see any insincerity in this with you. And those people that you help and the sort of humble life you leave now, what's next for you? Like, what is your next set of projects? Do you look that far ahead, or are you very just content? Because I imagine, right? And again, Ron completely forgot about the whole prison side of all of this, and we just completely skittled past it, right? Like, you've lived in fear, you've lived a double life, you've paid the price for it, you've had a year of being a space cadet and feeling invincible. You've then went through the prison system, come out the other end. I mean, are you just content in the now, or have you got a plan?
I am content in the now because it's a one day at a time life for me. I don't
100%.
live in yesterday and I don't look to tomorrow. But what I will say is that my hope is that my passion project, which is to have a book released at some point, followed by a movie, followed by devoting myself to tour, much like a Tony Robbins or a Jordan Belfort does around the world, to send that message we talked about earlier to particularly men. Ask for help. Asking for help is a strength today. Have the courage to be vulnerable, be honest, be transparent. And I believe that when I accomplish that, I can use my voice and my poor choices and my experiences to help others not make those same mistakes.
Yeah. And see, I'll be honest. I feel like going back and just slapping the two guys that got you into gambling, right? Really, this is all their fault, Jonathan. Let's be honest. Dirty, degenerate gamblers pulling you into their sordid world. And up until that point, everything was Linkin Park and Alanis Morissette. Okay? So if you've not said it, I'm saying it was their fault. Okay? Okay. You fell into the bad crowd. That's what it comes to. You're the classic tale of falling into the bad crowd. But I mean, obviously, there's more to than that. But let me just get a couple more prison questions in,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Of course.
Because, I mean, Shaun went to the pits of hell when he went to prison. And I read the first chapter of one of his books. And then that was enough for me, right? And he was just talking about cockroaches and having to deal with that, right? Now, was there any moments in prison where you feared for your life? I mean, obviously there was the whole crying for 5 weeks, right? Which is fine. I would have probably been the same. I'm not going to lie. I'm not made for prison, right? I've got a friend who's in jail right now. I should really go and visit them, but I'm too nervous because there's something weird about willingly walking into a prison, right? For me, there's something weird about that. So, I mean, was there any moments where you thought this was it?
Yes. First of all, I was the first one to go to bed at night because usually the fights happen at night. I never got in a fight. I kept my head down. I was the first one to wake up. And as soon as we were allowed out, I would walk the track and pray every morning. But there was one day where, I don't know, like 2 a.m, 2 guys walk in with a hood and they grab someone out of his bed and they bring him in the shower and beat the hell out of him. And I was told to remove myself and not look at what they were doing. And that was a moment where I realized, you know what, I got to keep one eye open. And, but thankfully I did not. I never got a disciplinary action in prison because, like I said, I brought that nerd with me. I started being a nerd in prison. And I also started to get some humility in prison. And I started to realize that, I can't enjoy quality time with my family anymore. And it's because of these choices that I made. And, I just couldn't wait until I was released, and hoping that when I was released that I could earn back the trust from everyone that I wanted to. But it hasn't happened in my timeline. And that's what I choose to accept today, that, the people like my kids, my loved ones, all those that I hurt, it's as long as I do the next right thing, they'll come back in my life, not on my timeline, on my higher power's timeline. And so today I've learned patience. Today I've learned to just try and find joy and gratitude in things that I otherwise in the past would not have. And that's so prison, I never had, other than that moment. I had like one argument with someone on the softball diamond when we were playing, a member of a gang. I didn't realize he was a member of a gang.
Of course you didn't. The one time you're like, today's the day someone's getting knocked out. Okay. Of course you're going to pick the one gang guy. Of course you are. 100%. 100%. Okay.
And so when I got back into the dugout, my friend said to me, "Do you know who that is?" I said, "I have no idea." He says, "Well,
Johnny Blades."
Yeah. He says, "You're lucky that I know him, and I'm going to go calm him down now, or else you're in a lot of trouble." So he helped save me. And that was it, really, honestly. I kept to myself. I surrounded myself with a handful of quality guys, but also all the guys there I got along with. Prison is tough in the sense that it fosters racism and segregation. You have TV rooms that are by races. That's disgusting to me. We're all equal. And when you really get to know all the inmates or people in general, when you take the time to get to know a human being and you don't judge their book by its cover, find out that they have the same heart and soul that you do for the most part. And so I've made quality friends there. I talked to a handful of them today, and those people are in my inner circle today.
Bonds for life, right?
Amen.
Right. Okay, you lovely viewers. Let's jump into some of your questions. We've got some great ones. And first of all, Jonathan, thank you for taking us through your story. I'm a bit all over the place as an interviewer. I tend to concentrate on things that most people would be concentrating on other things. But that's just the way that I do. I like to get to know the person behind the story as opposed to it needing to be all about juicy bits of stories, if that makes sense. But I need to ask you about prison because I've had it hardwired into me by the Shaun Attwood channel that prison food. That's the other thing. What was the prison food like? That's the other Shaun Attwood go-to prison questions. I got to ask him, man. I know the answer. It's not going to be, well, Ron, it was absolutely decadent. You know what I'm saying? That's not the case. But I mean, he had something called mystery meat when Shaun was in prison. And like, I imagine imagine Mad Max's world and what the prison's like in Mad Max. That's what Shaun Attwood's entire prison experience was like. It was like Mad Max in a prison. Do you know what I mean? Like my friend Julia, right? She's in prison right now. She has a TV in her room. She has a phone in her room, right? She has like stickers up on the wall. She has nothing good to say about the inmates. It's very different depending on male and female prisons, right? I'm telling you that right now, because there ain't no shank stories. There ain't no nightmare prison scenarios in the showers. Very different world. Okay, so here's the first question from Cyan. Now, this is going back to what when you were talking about Chester, and the story is allegedly that Chester was looking to expose a monster network. So let me just ask you this question, but tie it in with a larger question. During your time, right, with celebrities in Hollywood, did you hear rumors? Was there ever any indication of this known secret of people that acquire children who have a draw to that? Was there ever any rumors or things that you heard? And obviously, don't name any names. You will get sniped. Okay. But was there any? I mean, I imagine, right? Someone could have came up and slapped you in the face during those 5 years. You probably wouldn't have noticed because you were too stressed out dealing with the lie ball. So, did you ever see anything like that? But and also the part about Chester. Because the rumor was he was about to expose a network of monsters. Was there anything you can add to that, or anything with regards to Hollywood?
I mean, the answer to this question, there's no way that Chester would expose. I never even heard of the Monster Network. So, and I'm being honest, so I don't know the answer to that. But I do know Chester well enough to know that he was a lovely human being who loved his family, and that I can't imagine that he would participate in anything like that.
Well, no. What we're saying, sorry, no. What we're saying is that Chester stumbled across, right, with the rise to fame and everything like that. That there was people in Hollywood that were abusing children, not Chester himself, and he was getting ready to expose it all, if you will. That is the big thing behind Chester's death, and one of the things that his son had mentioned. And listen, I'll be honest with you, I'm impressed that you even remember COVID with the amount of stress you were under. If I'm being honest, I'm saying that you were out of prison by then, but I mean, like, I can't imagine you would have noticed anything. You're the one guy in Hollywood that gets a pass because of the stress ball that you were in. If I'm being honest, you must have heard the rumors. You must know what we're getting at, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I read the same thing that everybody else read. I can honestly say I'm not immersed in that world anymore. So I don't know any more than your listeners, to be honest about that. What I can again tell you is that I highly doubt Chester was being sought out for anything or going to expose something. That's not his nature. Actually, let me take that back. His nature, if he saw some wrongs in society, I am certain that he would not expose. That's the wrong word I would choose to use for him. But I'm sure that he would make sure.
Here's the thing, Jonathan, right? When we look at Linkin Park on a scale of fame, right? They were very, very, very globally famous because they had a rigid fan base. They didn't have a like flash in the pan pop group audience. They had a dedicated audience. So they were very hard to push out of existence by a label, right? Linkin Park could have quite easily went independent and still had that massive fan base locked in. And I honestly think that somebody made somebody an offer and they turned that offer down. And I'm a big believer in the cabal, the occult, all of this stuff that runs the world. So we're maybe just from two different mindsets that are just, we're never going to see, we're not eye to eye on it, but I think we're just seeing it through different glasses. So we'll move on from that one. Okay, here we go. What are the worst tax mitigation activities a celebrity client has asked you to conduct on their behalf? Oh, big boy question. Here we go. You don't have to name any names, but my goodness, is there any spicy moments with working the numbers there? Number wizard. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you two examples. The famous one that everyone was talking about in the public is, just put money overseas and hide it in the bank account overseas and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. So don't try it, anybody. But the thing that a lot of artists did ask was, can I deduct my wardrobe? So when they're touring, right, they wear wardrobe.
Sure.
And actually it started with like the late Ozzy Osbourne, may he rest in peace. Ozzy always wore these crazy wardrobes, right?
Sure.
And so the IRS basically said, you cannot deduct your wardrobe if you use that wardrobe for personal use when you're out and about.
Sure.
And that was a big deal for artists, like, because, they can only deduct it if it was like, quote unquote, like a costume, a wardrobe that they wouldn't, they'd have to prove that they wouldn't wear what they're wearing on stage.
You see all these YouTubers that buy their mum cars in videos, right? Anything you put in a YouTube video is tax deductible. So if you're going to buy your mum a car, you buy it for the purpose of the YouTube video, and it's tax free.
Yes.
Crazy. So basically, that's what if you want to save some money, just become a YouTuber and then buy your mom a car that way. That's the easiest way of doing it.
I mean, the best way to save money is a lot of people think if they spend money, they're getting a deduction. But ask yourselves, if I want to buy, I'm making this up, a computer for $1,000, but I don't need it, I'm just buying it and spending $1,000 to get 50% off. Well, idiot, you just 50% that you shouldn't have had to spend because you really didn't need it.
It's like, why am I going into a shop and I want to buy one thing, but they're giving me a deal if I buy 5 of them? Why do I need 5 of them?
Correct.
I just give me one at a really good price, right? Do you know what I'm saying? It does my head in, man. It does my head in. It really, really does. So what would you say is the most common, like, shadiness that people would sort of make jokes? I imagine there's a lot of people being like, can we not just fudge the numbers? Ha ha ha. And then they sort of wait to see your reaction on things, right? How common is book shenanigans in Hollywood, if you will?
It's actually not as common as people would think, because they hire business managers who handle their taxes. And if they're going to listen, God willing, they listen to the advice of their business managers. What happens though is that a lot of young artists, young athletes, young actors, they believe that their money, like let's take a football player whom I once represented in that National Football League. He got a 3-year deal, $30 million, and he went out and upon receipt of that $30 million, decided to buy mom a house, brother and sister a car, all these so-called friends material things.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Because he thought that he was going to be in the NFL beyond this 3-year contract. There's no guarantee. So the best suggestion or advice I can give new artists is assume your first dollars in are your last dollars and live that way. And if you're fortunate enough to extend your career, you don't have to adjust your lifestyle because you're making more money. Invest it with a smart asset manager and allow your money to grow rather than waste it on hanger-oners that you call friends, that they're really not your friends. They're with you because they want to get into the clubs with you. They want to go to parties with you. They want you to pay for their hotel room and travel to come with you. They're not your real friends. Choose your friends wisely and save your money.
100%. My advice, especially if it's people that are getting into social media, if you're like in your mid-20s, don't spend any money until you're completely irrelevant. Just whatever you're living off beforehand to sustain your life, just continue living that level of life and bank it all. And when I say bank it, I mean take it all out the bank, buy gold freaking doubloons and bury them in the garden. Okay. Don't listen to this Bitcoin nonsense or this high interest savings madness. Gold bars, okay, actual treasure, okay. I tell you something, man. When you look at what we're taught in regular school, and then you look at what private elites children are taught in school, they're all taught about to live off of investments and being to be able to borrow against what their assets or their investments are worth. Which is another thing where people are dodging tax, by the way. I learned about that the other day. So we're all being taught how to spend money that we earn, right? And then the elite children are being taught how to basically be shifty, dodge a bunch of tax. And if I've got 100,000 in investments that are worth X amount, I can borrow against that, right? And that 100,000 isn't something I've earned. Anyway, I'm pretending like I understand numbers. Jonathan's looking at me like, okay, there's only so far down this road of nonsense I can allow this to go. But I'm on to something, right? I'm not completely mad. That is like a thing, right? Like,
correct. You're not completely mad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I validated you.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the next one. Okay, so again, I don't know if you're going to be. Do you think Mariah sacrificed her mother and sister? Welcome to the Shaun Attwood channel. Just want to point that out right now. This is the kind of crew that we're in, and it's a serious question. And again, I imagine the safest answer is no comment.
No, I'm honest. I don't know. I mean, the answer I would give is no. The Mariah Carey I worked with was a sweetheart, and she loved her children, and she had some challenges, I'm sure, and dynamics with her family. But I don't know about the word sacrificed her mom and sister, so I can't address that.
Yeah, that's right. Don't worry. Okay, I don't know what this is. Can you speak on the infamous death insurance in artist contracts?
I can only imagine what they're thinking is life insurance.
Okay.
Or permanent disability insurance. A lot of people would think that life insurance is the best type of insurance to get for them, and it's certainly important. But for artists, let's pick on Linkin Park for a moment. You want to get personal disability insurance. You want to insure, if you're Rob Borden, the original drummer, you want to insure your hands. What if you can't play the drums anymore? Right. Or if you're Chester, you want to insure your vocal cords. What if you can't sing anymore? You're an athlete and you're a quarterback. What extremities do you want to insure? So I don't know anything about this infamous death insurance, but I think that would be my answer to
if there's anything with the word death insurance involving musical contracts, it will probably be some messy thing involving royalties, I imagine. And it's got its bad rap from that, possibly.
Well, that's like the Taylor Swift and Scooter Braun argument for the last decade, right? And where she was fighting for her rights as artists should. And she, most artists give up a lot of their rights to the record labels. Yeah. And Taylor Swift and Scooter Braun recently made an agreement, and he gave her back her music, her catalog, because now she owning.
Let's be honest, Jonathan. That's never happened before. Okay.
Right.
Something went on. I don't know what. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, right? I was at our Eras tour. There's a freaking Taylor Swift ribbon right here from that, right? Something went on there. Okay. Like, I don't know what went on, but accountants, lawyers, and music execs, right? Some of the most easy to create villains out of on TV for being able to do things to trap people all the way. No offense to all the accountants out there. But something went on, mate, because evil overlords don't hand over their money tickets for nothing. Nothing. Yeah. So something went on. But fair play to her, man. Fair play to her. Fair play to her to then re-release everything that she'd already released the way she wanted to. What a business model. I'm going to take the stuff I've already sold you. I'm going to make it all into 12-minute long songs and then resell it to you. Legend. Absolute legend. Okay, here we go. So were you or your firm ever firm audits by hang on a second. Were you or your firm ever audited by third parties outside the firm? If so, how did you hide the embezzlement?
That's a great question. So part of what I'm also going to do right in my career now is help people protect their assets. So I'm going to be able to help them with fraud, how not to commit fraud and what, and to protect the client really. And so the answer to that is no. And I believe that if there were stronger internal controls, I would not have been able to embezzle the money. And by stronger internal controls, one thing I would advise is that a lot of clients trust, and even if that trust is earned, they have their business manager, like I did, have power of attorney to sign checks, right? Because we cut all the checks, we pay all the bills, our staff. So I strongly encourage artists that are out there now, if any are listening and have a business manager, ask yourself, is my business manager the only signature person on the check? If so, I'm going to change that immediately. Any expense item over 5,000, over 10,000 requires, in my opinion, the business manager coupled with the client. That's how I would have been caught and not able to do it.
So as a business manager, so I'm a celebrity. I hire you to be my business manager. You're running every aspect of my financial life. Is that basically is that what your job is?
With the exception of investing your assets, there's an outside asset manager.
It sounds a lot like a parent's job to a 12-year-old. If I'm being honest with you, it sounds a lot like that. Now, why is it so necessary? What would be the worst thing to happen if Alanis Morissette never had a financial advisor? Like, she would just sit with the money she had, right? And that's the worst thing that could happen. Or is it all about the business of making your money work for you that lures people in, right?
The latter. It's also being smart and safeguarding your assets. It's preparing those budgets I talked about earlier for a tour. Are you maximizing your tour profits? What expenses do we reduce? There's a lot
to it. Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah, because we'll just expand on that a little bit more, because the tour side of it makes a lot more sense, because that's where things, I imagine that would be the moment where you really start feeling like you're earning your money, because setting up budgets for tours, I ran nightclubs for 5 years, tiny little scale of it. Nightmare. Just give me the cash, and whatever cash is there didn't even exist in the books in the first place, unless someone's paying on a card. There ain't no cash. You know what I'm saying? Jonathan. So, that must have been another epic part of the job. Putting together tours and then standing there at the tour being like, whoa.
Yeah. The artists today, celebrities today, live in a very litigious world where, if a drummer throws out a drumstick out in the audience and a member of the audience gets injured by it, who do you think is going to be sued? 5 minutes later, it's the drummer and the band. And so our job as business managers is to manage that risk and to bind policies that will protect these artists. Then you have lots of sources of income. You have merchandise income. What's the right merchandise company to use? What's the proper terms of a merchandise deal? How do you get paid? How about royalties, songwriting royalties, publishing royalties, artist royalties, producer royalties?
You've got to understand all of this.
We had to understand all of it. We had a department a royalty department that did all of the audits that one of your subscribers asked about earlier on when we received the royalty statements. Is the client, is the label or the publishing company properly reporting the royalties for the client? And we would audit that. And
I would have been terrible at your job. I would have been so enthusiastic for the first 2 weeks. But see, when I realized like all of that, nah, man, that would have completely fried my mind completely. So I probably would have been embezzling some stuff too, if I'm being honest with you. I would have just been like, this is how I cope with stress. Okay. I just embezzle some stuff. All right, here we go. What is or was your go-to material item used to steer a rapper into signing a lucrative contract? Was that something that you were behind, contract signing or anything like that? Or was that more artist management as opposed to the financial side?
So an artist, let's call it this rapper, usually has a professional team. The professional team consists of, let's say, an agent for touring, a personal manager to guide the artist's creative vision, whether it's recording in the studio or whatever creatively the artist wants to try and accomplish. Then they have an entertainment lawyer, and then they have a business manager. So I was the business manager. So the entertainment lawyer is the one reviewing this contract for the rapper. Now we would get a copy of it as part of the team and talk about the terms, financial terms of the deal. But those financial terms had already been negotiated by the entertainment lawyer and the other party to the contract, the rapper or the company.
I'm with you. All right. Now, again, welcome to the Shaun Attwood channel. Next two questions I want to combine into one. Did you see any demonic worship in the industry? And did you see any witches?
No and no.
Well, you've met a witch today. I'm a practicing pagan witch, so you can at least now live the rest of your life knowing that you have met a practicing pagan witch.
Okay.
So yeah, you can tick that one off the list. Now let's go to the next one here. We've got that. We've done that one. What year was it that you were in prison? What was your? In fact, let's do the whole time frame. When did the 5 years begin? When all the gambling started? What year was that?
July. So I surrendered on July 11th, 2017. I was released on April 20th, 2016. April 16th, excuse me, 2020. So I served about 34 months incarcerated, 16 months on home because I got out early for COVID. So I was required to do 16 months of home confinement with an ankle monitor, followed by 3 years of probation.
You had to do all of that.
Yeah, I gave the government almost 9 years of my life.
See, but the way it work, Jonathan, right, is you spend 5 years embezzling and partying secretly, right? Totally living the Playboy lifestyle. Then you go to jail and you get to think about all these good times and go, wow, 7 million for 36 months, not too bad. That's where you messed up. That's where you messed up, man. The stress ball business. And saying that, it's a good model for crime because there'd be no glamorized stories about that. There'd be no, Imagine the gangster freaking rap song of your whole encounter. It'd be depressing, bro. I mean, I'm just saying, death and shouldn't have did that. Is it possible and successful to do EMDR through YouTube videos yourself, or is it better to attend sessions? I've been waiting 2.5 years for this treatment. I have no idea what any of that is. So I don't know if you do either, Jonathan.
Yeah, I can answer that. So EMDR is what I did when I returned home. Right. It's eye movement desensitization. So it's one of the greatest therapeutic modalities when someone's dealing with trauma issues. And so I would definitely not use a YouTube video. Why? Is because you want a great therapist who specializes in EMDR, and it's not a short-term fix. And so why it's long-term is you can really dive deep into the trauma on a singular session, and a good therapist will say, let's time out. Let's not continue with this, because it could do the reverse of by not helping you, the enormous amount of trauma response that you're having in that session. And so you want a therapist to say, time out, let's regroup next week. And this is why it takes a long time, to do EMDR. It's not something that you can fix in 6 sessions. Yeah. Certainly a YouTube video isn't going to know whether your trauma is escalating or not during that session or video.
Can you give us like the cliff notes on the therapy, the theory behind the therapy, and the magic of it, if you will. I'm sorry, I'm limited with intelligent sounding words. So
yeah, so a lot of people who have trauma, myself included, suppress that trauma and do not deal with it for a period of time. And for me, it took me 46 years before I decided to deal with it. And those suppressed emotions are a function of the default subconscious mind that's been wired since birth to 7 years old. So what EMDR does, you talk about being a witch, you can use a wand. So if you were doing EMDR with me, if Leah was, she's the one who asked the question, the therapist is going to ask you to follow the wand around. And by concentrating on that wand and having a question posed to you, it's a way to have some of that suppressed emotion become unsuppressed. And when you're flushing that out, it can become very, not cathartic, but it can become very traumatic in and of itself, because you're not ready yet to feel that pain from that trauma. So
is it in the realm of like when your subconscious is focusing on the wand, right?
mm-hmm.
Are you talking to the person while this is happening? Is there any sort of regression as part of it? What is the effectively where are you guiding them when they're looking at it? Because that's quite, I've never heard this. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm not an EMDR therapist, but what I would tell you is, so you're being asked to follow this wand, right? And there's other ways, techniques besides a wand, but you're following the wand, and now the therapist is asking you, what are you feeling, right? And based on what you're feeling, the therapist will either continue or expound on that with you. And that's why it requires a therapist who understands your response to the question, how are you feeling?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you for answering that. Hope that helps Leah as well. Okay. As you're a therapist now, do you see the change in people's personalities merely as a chemical reaction affecting the brain, or have you seen the spiritual influence in yourself and others? Thank you.
So for sure, the spiritual influence in not only myself, but others. And the reason why is that chemical reaction, there are a lot of substances that can induce psychosis. So that would be considered like a chemical reaction, whether it's meth-induced psychosis. You could even have alcohol-induced psychosis. You can have, if people start to have real psychosis from these chemicals as a reaction, your brain can be cognitively impaired, and it could become permanent. Even today, cannabis can induce psychosis, believe it or not. When I was growing up, it was called grass. That's what it was called. There's my age right there. Today, at these dispensaries, the chemical and the potency of the strength of the cannabis, evidence-based literature supports that they can induce psychosis. So be careful for anyone who thinks that cannabis can create a really adverse chemical reaction. It can. So what we do see, though, through learning how to change the inner dialogue with oneself, becoming self-aware, connecting to emotions, committing to long-term recovery, abstinence, you have this spiritual influence within yourself. And that spiritual influence will increase your confidence level, increase your self-esteem and self-worth, and you'll be on this beautiful journey without any chemicals to live a life that you deserve to live.
Yeah, I think that's one other thing that our audience is very much in tap with, is spiritual journeys and self-awareness and awakenings and all of that. And it's we've already got people asking for you to come back and delve into that side of your life at a later date. And I think that would be really fascinating because, obviously the embezzling financial advisor to Beyonce, major talking point. But I think we could definitely do another 90 minutes at least on who you are now, the big steps moving forward. And I would strongly suggest, if you've not got a social media presence, that you look into YouTube, into passing on knowledge that is going to be there. And I think you've got one of these stories and one of these paths that you're on now that many people will connect with, even just the basics of you putting them on that right path. You know what I'm saying? And from obviously an evil business point of view, it's all a marketing funnel. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you strike me as somebody that if you could have a reach of 1,000 people and you could give them a little nugget, right? Not professional therapy, but a little tiny nugget that steers them onto a better decision that day, I honestly think that's going to be your next super leveling up in who you're becoming. And this is where you turn around and tell me that you've got a YouTube channel with 500,000 subscribers, and this is what you do on a daily basis. And I've not done my research, but that's how we do things here sometimes. But if you don't, I would strongly suggest that you do.
No, so I appreciate you saying that. So if I can, I have a very small social media following. My professional Instagram, is it okay if I give that out?
Yes, please. I'll actually put it, if you let me slowly type it out so I can get a link, I'll put it in the description there for you.
Yeah, and people could DM me, and I'm happy to help anyone who has the courage to ask. When you tell me, you ready?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
My Instagram is @TheRealJonathan Schwartz, which is spelled Jona. Well, it's spelled just like it is on the.
Oh, yeah. I got you. I'll still spell it wrong, guaranteed. The real
Jonathan Schwartz.
Jonathan Schwartz. Hang 1 second. Okay, there we go. We did it, guys. I spelled it all right. That's a big achievement for me.
Hey.
All right, sweet. Yeah. Okay, listen. Can we get this up to at least 1,000 by the end of this show, please? There's enough of us here if we all just take a minute. Oh, Mandy's there already with that. Fantastic. Yeah, everyone's saying please bring Jonathan back.
Yeah,
so maybe what we'll do, maybe we'll get something worked out where, have you got a YouTube channel?
I don't, but I'm happy to come back on your podcast if it's helping people.
Listen,
I'm here.
Listen.
Yes, sir.
Why the hell have you not got a YouTube channel?
Because I'm waiting for my book and movie, and then you'll start to see a splash.
No. We need to have a chat after this. No. Okay, what you want to be doing right now is harboring a passive audience. So, for example, if you had a YouTube channel up with one video saying, hey, I'm Jonathan Schwartz, at some point I'm going to fully launch this channel. Thank you for being here. Every podcast you do, you're going to siphon off passive subscribers. And that will build up and build up and build up, that when you're ready to launch it, you've already got an audience, if you see what I'm saying. An audience. Otherwise, because people, trust me, YouTube is a nightmare. Okay, you need to be way ahead of the thought process that you've got. And I'm telling you, I think people would really enjoy your teachings, your stories, all of that. And you're definitely doing yourself a disservice by not jumping on that for sure.
Thank you.
And yeah, people want you back. And I think when we bring you back, we should definitely get your YouTube channel, right? So that after we do that, we can do like an after chat over there and things like that, because it's good to kind of grow communities and do things like that. So listen, Jonathan, I have had a blast this evening. I just want to say that right now. It has been an absolute blast meeting you. The side chat and the community have been sucked in by your story, and we'd love to see more of you. And I think that is just testament to the path you're on now, because they are not an easy sell, our community. And if they thought that you were not worth coming back, they would tell us. And
thank you so much. To your listeners, I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm so grateful for those comments.
Yeah, well, listen, incredible story, incredible guy. I mean, worst criminal ever, right? Ever. Done it all wrong, mate. You've done it all wrong. But man, I honestly, if we could bottle those moments of pressure and stress and anxiety when we're in that double life, having those shower moments where everyone sounds like what. If we could bottle that feeling and sell it, we could put people off making so many bad choices if they could feel the actual like what comes from these poor paths that we go on. And I just want to say to anyone who might be listening, I can tell you this right now. Anyone who thinks that Jonathan didn't spend 5 years torturing and punishing himself for his own decision making and hasn't gone through the prison system, paid his debt to society, paid back all of his money, there is nothing anybody can say or do to this man that he has not done to himself in the pit of despair that he was in when he was trapped in a web of his own doing on this 6-year path to convincing yourself you could beat the FBI's #1 lie detector. you have to understand life is short, and I can guarantee you that there's not a day gone by where you have not put yourself through the mills of regret for this whole chapter of your life. And I hope that the people that you want to reconnect with reconnect and understand that life's too short. Life is too short for a 6-year window that you've paid the price for and settled your debts, not only with your clients, but with society.
Thank you.
Life's too short for years to go by. Trust me. So I hope anybody who's watching there, who's got like a family member who you fell out with 5 years ago, phone them now. Get on the phone now, because I'm telling you, you never know when someone's going to be on the phone and be like, oh, Jim's got cancer, Sally's got a brain tumor. And then you've now got that awkward moment where you have to phone them up and reconcile because of all of that. So just take the leap. And Jonathan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you to the Shaun Attwood channel. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to everybody. I think I'm going to be going live on my channel in about half an hour. So get ready for Friday night and the mess that comes with that. Jonathan, thank you so much. Shaun Attwood channel and the mods. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you all.